I wasn't sure if I should interfere, that this was the time for Kathy's family. But you know what? I am her family. I'm her daughter-in-law, and I've been impacted by this crime just as much as anybody. You brutally attacked a defenseless woman in her own home, a place where she should have felt safe, and you introduced us to horror. My name is Tina Parsons. I'm the wife of Greg Parsons. I can't even remember our life without this crime being a part of it, and it's sad. Oh, it's a long time. Your life can change like that, like in a dime, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, New Year's Eve, the two of us were having such a great night, and then the next day, everything was changed. St. John's is a beautiful place to live. It has its good sides and its bad sides. The weather's not great. Summers are beautiful, winters are harsh, but there's a strong sense of community, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. It's not a place where you can be anonymous. I met Greg in 1988. It was the first job I had out of high school. I had some friends that worked at Burger King and said, we'll get you a job. The first day that I worked, the manager said, Tina, this is Greg. Greg, you're gonna be teaching Tina how to make a Whopper today. I never experienced an attraction, physical attraction to somebody before. There was never anybody that could give me that butterfly feeling in my stomach like Greg did. The first 16 years of his life before me were tumultuous.
Families in Newfoundland stay here for generations. My family name is Parsons, and the Parsons family have been in Newfoundland forever. Same with Mom's family, the Carrolls. They were all descendants of Newfoundland. Well, my parents, it wasn't a good relationship between them, and they divorced when I was about 5 to 6 years old. I never had a lot of contact with my father. My mom had mental problems with prescription drugs and alcoholism. There was rough times. I found my mom intoxicated on the landing after falling over the stairs, unconscious, and I had to call the ambulance. There was occasions when I was removed from the house because we were drinking. There was physical abuse. I was hit. I blame it on the drugs and alcohol. We never really ate regular. There was no regular meals, and from a young age, I started to go to work. I started delivering flyers. My mom never really had much of a parenting role, so I guess I raised myself. Over here at James' place, we were the first people to move on the street. The second person to move on the street was the Doyle family. I grew up from the time I was 8 years old till 16 here at 16 James' place. And the Doyles lived at number 20 James' place, which was right here on the corner. Just 2 houses away. I got to know the family. I got to know Kenny. I got to know Mike, who's more my age. I got to know Brian. Let's call us free-range kids. Like back in that day, as soon as the sun came up, you were gone out around the neighborhood. You were out playing ball hockey. You were going down to Bowring Park. Brian was a weak fella. He was a weakling. He was the runt of the group. He wasn't smart or intelligent, and I would always have to help him get out of fist fights. And when we got teenagers, we would hang out down the basement and we would play music, have little jams and everything. And my house on James Place with Mom was definitely where we congregated. I wouldn't say that I was in an official band. We were all young fellas that grew up on what we call hard rock music, so heavy metal, and we'd be down there jamming downstairs and just having fun. When Tina and I got together, it put a bit of wedge there between myself and Brian because Tina was my everything. My mom and I, around September, we did have a fairly big argument. Basically, she decided she didn't want my things in the house anymore. So I got a call from her one day, and she said, come get your stuff, and it's all going to be out on the front lawn and within the hour. So when I went up there, sure enough, all my things were on the front lawn. I was very upset, and I did raise my voice, and she grabbed a hold of me, and I kept walking, and she fell backwards. And I brought her to the hospital, and she said she was fine and everything, but that was kind of the last straw for me. So it took me a couple of months to get less angry.
Later, just in the blink of an eye, our life was just gone.
My mother, she's dead. Tell me, take your time, my love. What is the matter?
So on January the 2nd, a 911 call was received from 16 James Place. It was a distraught young man, and he was asking for assistance.
Come to 16 James Place. I was trying to get in touch with my mother for 2 days. And she's up on the bathroom floor. Oh, my God.
Okay, is she breathing? Have you checked?
I just peeked in the bathroom. There's blood everywhere. I don't know what happened.
My name is John House, and I was an investigator on the second investigation into the murder case of Catherine Carroll. The police found a woman deceased in the upstairs bathroom. There was a lot of blood. This particular scene suggested that this was a very frenzied and prolonged attack. There was a lot of rage exhibited. The medical examiner determined that there were 53 slash and stab wounds to Mrs. Carroll's body that appeared to have been caused by a serrated blade. When they examined the knives in the house, there was a large set of knives that was still in the box, and one of those knives was absent. As they were examining the bathroom scene, the soap wrapper that was on the ledge of the bathtub that appeared to be freshly opened. It appeared that the offender may have showered in the bathroom after the murder. There was a window broken in the basement to the back of the house, and a pane of glass had been moved to the side. The police felt that it was impossible for a person to pass through that window. And because of that, they felt that somebody had intentionally made it look like a point of entry. They believed then, if there was no identified point of entry, that the person responsible had to have access to that house with a key or was let in. The medical examiner ruled out that there was any evidence of a sexual assault. Then the investigators were getting this information about the relationship between Catherine and Greg that pointed to an acrimonious relationship between them. There was a parade of witnesses, all saying that Greg was either violent towards his mother or that she was in fear of Greg. A neighbor of Catherine Carroll came forward with information that Catherine was expressing her fear of Greg and that she had arranged to have her locks changed. Greg couldn't account for his whereabouts after 4 a.m. He had no other person that could confirm where he was after he went to bed. So that period of time coincided what the autopsy had indicated as the probable time of the attack. Some of the investigators drew a lot of weight from what they perceived as Greg Parsons' reaction and demeanor in the aftermath of finding his mother. He was subdued. Police officers considered him to be withdrawn. On top of that, they met Brian Doyle, who was a close childhood friend of Gregory Parsons, and he raised the existence of a tape attributed to Greg, and the title of that song was Kill Your Parents. It was an accumulation of circumstantial evidence. So all of this combined to zero in on Gregory Parsons.
Stuff don't happen in Newfoundland, don't happen in St. John's, Newfoundland, very rarely. And why her? Two police officers came up to my house on Shea Heights, knocked on my door, and it's Greg Parsons is being arrested for the murder of Catherine Carroll, and you're requested at police headquarters. Right now, come with us. So I was at the top of the stairs, looking down over the landing at the front door, and my knees just, I couldn't believe it. I was like, no way, you can't arrest you, Greg. Sure, you didn't, like, you know, it's not gonna happen.
They came and they said to me, Greg Parsons, you're under arrest for the murder of Catherine Carroll. My heart just sunk. It was like getting shot. And they cuffed me and brought me to the back of the police car. The police did everything they could do to try to break me. And how do you break an innocent man? Here I was 19, scared out of my wits, and it was the most traumatic thing I've ever gone through next to finding Mom. On January 2nd, I made multiple attempts to call Mom, and Tina and I were getting worried.
The next day, same thing. He was calling all day, and he said, there's no way. There's something wrong, Tina. Like, she would not be going 2 days without answering the phone. So we went up, and I was out in the car.
The light was on in the bathroom upstairs. It was a couple of days I was trying to get a hold of her, to no avail, and I could hear the family dog inside, and the dog was very upset, so I tried to make entry through the back door and through the front door with no success. So what I did was I went to the slider window in the front of the house and lifted up on the corner and pushed the window in and gained access to the house. I went in through the window. The dog was going ballistic. I made my way up the stairs, and the bathroom door was locked. It was just a push lock, so I hit the doorknob very hard, and the door opened, and the first thing I saw was Mom's legs, and then when I peeked into the door, it's a sight that's burnt into my mind. It was so horrific. One of her legs were up on the toilet and one was on the floor, and she was under the sink in a pool of blood, and there was blood all over her face. Just the sight of so much blood was overwhelming. I just turned and ran down over the stairs and opened the front door and ran out to Tina.
We came out through front, and I was in the car, and the screams coming out of him. She's dead, there's blood everywhere.
Emergency service.
Mother, she's dead.
Tell me, take your time, my love. What is the matter?
While he was calling 911, I started walking up the 2 flights of stairs to the bathroom, and I got halfway up the second landing, and I heard him, "Don't go up there." And thank God I don't have that mental picture in my head. And he saved me from that, from having to close my eyes and see her on the bathroom floor. I'm so glad. He got to live with that, but I don't have to live with that.
I was really confused at first. Murder was the furthest thing from my mind. I was thinking, could she have fallen in there? But there was so much blood, and I could see her doing it to herself because she had made suicide attempts in the past. She tried to hang herself in the basement, and there was other times where she took multiple pills, as in the latter years. So.
We thought it was suicide. We couldn't even fathom that it was a murder had taken place. We just knew that his mother was dead, and what brought her to do this to herself?
I was in the interrogation room. I was mentally and physically exhausted. Finally, I just said, "I'm exercising my right to remain silent. Will you please bring me to the lockup?"
I was scared. I lost 14 pounds in 10 days. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. They let me bring some books to them. So inside a book, I taped a note, and I taped it closed so nobody wouldn't find it. Don't believe anything that they're telling you. We're gonna do everything that we can to get you out. We all love you, and he taped it to the cell. And that's what kept him going.
They looked at me and never looked at anybody else, and if they just had to look a little tiny bit further, this never would have happened to me.
By today's standards, there was plenty of material to analyze, but by the standards of the day, they needed fairly large quantities to get a meaningful result. So they did do the analysis, but it didn't produce any results. All of these statements were pointing the finger at Greg as having a lot of animosity towards his mother.
All they did was bombard the jury members with anybody that had anything bad to say about the relationship. And it was months and months of just, I heard this and she told me this.
When I was sitting in court, hearing all the things that were said to me, it made me feel horrible. It made me feel like a monster. It is amazing how they could take someone like me and make me look like a pure demon.
Then you had the tape, Kill Your Parents.
The jury heard that song over and over and over. 9 times, 10 times. It was played on NTV, it was played on CBC. Everybody was there, and everybody was a part of the writing of this song. Brian Doyle wrote parts of it. Mikey Doyle, his brother, wrote parts of it. Mark Maisonneuve, he wrote parts of it. Greg wrote parts of it. I was even chiming in, because I was always there. Every day, they're just waiting and waiting and waiting, and it just, you could hear the clock tick, 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 and just waiting. It was just like, it was just pure torture.
It took 4 or 5 days. Obviously, I was totally nervous at that point. If it went that long, they're having trouble. The jury walked in, and I knew it was going to be a guilty just by the looks on their face. They wouldn't look at me. One lady was crying. And I felt like I was shot, and pandemonium broke out. I could hear Tina screaming outside. She was just outside, and they had police on standby. I'd say 20 or 30 police officers ran into the building.
I was screaming and screaming, and I was throwing up, and it was just, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And then they were marching the jury out in front of me, and I was like, what have you done? What have you done? And Greg could hear me screaming. He said he'll never get the noise out of his head of my screams.
It was the most horrible day of my life. I think I'm the first person in Canada that was ever convicted without one piece of physical evidence. Not a hair, not a fiber, not a fingerprint. Hearsay evidence. When you go to jail and you're lying on the bottom bunk looking up at the graffiti and thinking to yourself, this is going to be your view for the rest of your life. I was devastated. It was very hard walking around town and trying to lead as normal a life as I can, because I was a convicted murderer out on bail, and you're being recognized as a man that killed his mother.
Now, I knew he was innocent, so I knew there was a murderer out there. So we were trying to figure out, okay, we're gonna try to have to solve this, because I don't know what they're thinking, so who could it have been?
We just go through theories, and we'd ask ourselves, like, friends' names would come up. Could it be this friend? No, not in a million years. And I'm talking my closest friends.
We found out that Kathy had some new friends in the neighborhood, and they were bad news. They were new in her life, and we didn't know much about them.
We went over it so many times, and it's just amazing that we couldn't put the pieces together. We
managed to build a life together, Because, I mean, it just took so long that it was like, it was no holding off. So we got married in June 25th, 94. I was 2 months pregnant on Zachary when we got married. And here we were, our lives just devastated. Zachary was just this gift from God. The focus was on him and making sure he was a happy, loved little boy.
Starting a family was a huge decision on our part, but Tina said to me, we just got to go on with life. Like, our life has been on hold for 4 or 5 years at that point.
Three major issues led to their decision to overturn the conviction. One of those was the use of hearsay evidence. A second issue was the use of the Kill Your Parents tape, which was deemed to be highly prejudicial. And a third point concerned a comment that was made by a Crown prosecutor saying if Gregory Parsons didn't do it, then who did? And the court felt that that was an inappropriate comment.
I mean, it was a relief that the conviction was overturned and a new trial was ordered. But the thoughts of having to go through that again was just so daunting.
There was a bit of relief because I knew they had nothing. I didn't do it, so there was no evidence, only hearsay evidence. But I was worried. I didn't trust the legal system. At that point, there was no trust anymore.
We knew it wasn't Greg. So there was a murderer out there. We were just grasping at straws at the time to try and figure out what happened.
The police saved samples from under Mom's fingernails, her fingernail clippings. They also saved a towel that they found in the washer downstairs.
Sergeant Piercy, our forensic identification officer, he was aware and up-to-date on forensic science practices, and he brought forward the idea that we should resubmit these exhibits.
I got a call from the lawyer that was representing me at the time, and he phoned me about 8 o'clock in the morning and basically said, get down to my office and bring your family with you.
So I got Zachary dressed and we called a taxi, and me and Greg and Zachary sat in the back seat. Well, Greg was very suspicious, and we were panicking. We didn't know, because so many things had gotten twisted and turned. I mean, the police, they were the bad guys. They weren't the good guys anymore. They were the bad guys now.
The lawyer said that the DNA came back and it's not yours, and we're going to court this afternoon.
In the wrongful conviction case of Gregory Parsons, Commissioner Lemaire said there was no malice, but that Mr. Parsons was a good person who had bad things happen to, and that the investigation and prosecution became a runaway train fueled by tunnel vision.
That's where we came into the picture then as a new team. The decision was made that we would start all over and completely reinvestigate this case. We had a huge benefit with doing this because we had that DNA profile. We had some calls, but nothing much came from it until December, when we received a call from a person who indicated to us that we should be looking at Brian Doyle. The information we had was that Brian was living in the province of Ontario in the Toronto area. What we had planned was an undercover sting, which is commonly known as the Mr. Big scenario. What that involves is the creation of a fictitious criminal organization. And we would reach out to Mr. Doyle and develop a relationship with him where he believes he's interacting with people involved in illegal activity.
We're going to go on a little journey, and I want honesty, okay?
So what we did, we rented a suite in a hotel. We had cameras in the room. They were in different places. I'm not going to disclose where they were.
In my organization, if I know the secret, you don't share it, fuck you. All right? All right? It's not a secret.
Brian believed that by getting the approval of this person, Mr. Big, it would elevate his status in the organization.
If everything works out here, you and I are going to be our own business associates upon ourselves, okay? You're going to make good bucks.
As part of his cover story, Mr. Big had access to information about Brian Doyle's background through sources in the law enforcement world, and that he had become aware that Brian Doyle was actually named as a suspect in Mrs. Carroll's murder.
When was the last time you talked to your good friend, Gregory?
92.
92?
Around that.
How was Gregory Parsons doing in 92?
Not too good.
Yeah, why?
Still on that murder charge.
Huh?
That was pretty incredible what went on there in that room that night. You know, it was just so tense.
You're involved.
I'm involved.
No, something.
No. Case was closed. You thinking I did it?
Well,
Well, what?
been there?
Was it me? No, it wasn't me.
We were aware that this could be intimidating for Brian. So we built into the scenario that we give him a way out, and we tell him that if he doesn't want to go here, he can leave.
The door's there. I really want you to fucking look at that door. It's your escape route to end this.
It was years of work that led us to him, and certainly months of work on this undercover operation.
I've got one answer for that. Visual answer.
As he got up and walked to the door when that was said,
You're one curious motherfucker, aren't you?
he locked the door and came back in and sat down. We knew then that there was something was going to happen.
What? You just walked in and did whatever and shit happened? What'd you piss you off about?
I don't know. I told you I was completely and utterly in another world, another dimension, another universe. That night at the party, I had...
Now, did you walk in?
I had LSD in my system. I had marijuana in my system. I had beer, right?
He started to talk about how he had broken into the house, went up the stairs, and took off his clothes, and went into Mrs. Carroll's room.
Went to her room, crawled in there, woke her up. She was freaked out. What are you doing here? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
She went to the washroom, and she had it.
Her reaction was to run to the bathroom, and he chased her down, and then he killed her with the knife. And he described in graphic detail how he carried that out.
Maybe in the back of my mind, I was thinking sex.
And it was chilling. It was absolutely chilling to watch him talk about that nonchalantly, really, like it was no big deal.
She was suffering
From?
alcoholism, drug addiction. What was she gonna end up like another couple of years if I didn't do it? She's rotting away in a bedridden, having Greg tend on it, 23 hours a day. Feed me this, pop me this.
What was the real reason?
Real reason. love for a good friend.
Police, during the second investigation of the murder, tracked Mr. Doyle down in Ontario. They used undercover officers and surveillance to gain his confidence, and he eventually confessed to the crime.
I couldn't believe it. It was Brian Doyle. I really never thought that any of my friends that I grew up with would be capable of such a horrific crime.
It was betrayal, it was relief, it was so many emotions. He used to go upstairs and sit down and talk to Greg's mom, like when we were in the basement, and I just started to shake because it was like he was right there with us the whole time. And how evil does somebody have to be able to do something like that?
One night, years ago, I ran into Brian Doyle, and I was mad at him for telling the police that about the kill your parents song, like, and I kind of gave him a jab or a shove or something like that. And he looked at me in my face and he said, I deserved that. He was saying, I deserved it because I killed your mom. Brian Doyle was actually a guest at our wedding. Like, we never suspected him at all. But he signed our guest book. When he signed it, Brian Doyle, hi, 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 bye, bye. That was the ultimate betrayal. That was the ultimate betrayal.
When we arrived back in St. John's with Brian Doyle, part of the plan was to take him to the crime scene and have him describe where he went in through that window, and he did that.
After he murdered my mom, he made his way home towards Empire Avenue where he lived. Once he crossed this street, he took the murder weapon, threw it over the fence here into the city council yard, and subsequently, the RNC found that knife. Brian Doyle brought him here 10 years later, and they retrieved the murder weapon. In the first investigation, this was the search map used by the RNC. All the police were interested in is from Mom's house all the way down to my house on Southside Road. Mom's house was right here. The murder weapon was found right across the street from Mom's house in the council yard, outside the search area. If they had to do the proper square or the proper circle grid and they had to go across and look into that council yard, there's a very high probability that they would have found a knife and any other evidence that was there. It's unbelievable. That's how close I was to not being arrested for this crime.
This is Brian Doyle, a former close friend of Gregory Parsons. Today, he came to Supreme Court in St. John's to put an end to a 12-year-old unsolved murder, that of Greg Parsons' mother, Catherine Carroll.
It's hard to put into words. When I seen him in court, he never looked at me. I was furious. The emotions that were going through my body, it was a whirlwind. I can hardly remember it. It was so overwhelming. I know I should talk about the impact it had on me, but I can't help think about the impact it had on her. If she was here today, she would have met her beautiful grandchildren, my two sons, Zachary and Joshua. She will never have the chance to hold them, kiss them, spend holidays with them, all because of you, Brian. When I close my eyes at night, I see my mother's lifeless, bloody body on the floor and relive the horror of the helplessness that I felt not being able to help her. There will never be peace in my life, and I wish the same for you. Once he gets out on the streets and he's got to live in the real world, I guarantee you, he is going to reoffend, and it'll be on the parole board. When you let this animal out and he kills another, it's on you.
That's the pressure blower?
Yep.
Greg certainly made the right decision when he went to the fire services because it gave him back his self-respect. He was no longer that fella on the news that was accused of matricide, of murder. He was the fella that ran into the burning building or went up the light pole to get the cat. You know, I'm so proud of him because his resilience is just astounding.
I'm blessed with two beautiful young men. I've never had a day's trouble with either son. Joshua's computer networking and Zach working as a firefighter.
This happened when Dad was 20 years old, 21 years old. Like, I'm 25 now. And for him to be going through all that, to provide the opportunities for me and my brother that where I am now, like, he's definitely my hero. I don't know if I'd be able to get through that and provide a life for my children like that. It's amazing what he overcame, and so that's why he's my hero.
What does it feel like to hear that?
It feels like I wants to cry. Proud of me, boys.